Just this is so not going well. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Happy Sunday, everybody. I hope everybody had a great weekend. My name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team, based out of Sacramento, California. We are 45 strong up and down the state, which means if you think you have a paranormal need and you need help with it, you get a hold of us. Find us all over the web, and my reader is not working right now. Just give me a second. Here we go. This is how it's been all day. Okay, finally. Technology. Just find us. We're all over the web, at all the places we're not supposed to mention over off of the Clock app. But you can find us all over the web, and we can help you. It might take us a couple days to get out to you. We will definitely call you and talk with you. But because California is a really huge state, and so it might take us a while. We even have plenty of people in Hawaii that can help you, people in Nevada, Washington, D.C. I have people back east that can help you, that are members of our team, and things like that. What are we doing today? Well, normally I'm doing psychic readings, 3-card readings over on TikTok. But today, because it's Sunday Ghost Day, I decided to whip out the Ghosty book so we can have some ghost stories to start to start the work week with. So why don't you do me a favor and grab yourself some hot cocoa or coffee or whatever it is you drink. Dim those lights, and we're going to continue with our ghost stories. And these ghost stories are really put together by a psychologist, and she's picked the best ghost stories by the best authors. So there's some. The book has the combination with Edgar Allan Poe and people like that. So the last two we read have been pretty good. We're in the middle of another one now. I don't remember what it was. You probably don't either because I've been sick. Okay, so I have been ill, and so it's been like 2 weeks since I've read. So we're just gonna have to just jump in the middle of this and get a feel for what's going on. Okay, let's just have to jump in the middle of this because I don't remember, and I know you guys probably don't remember. Okay, I see I do have a moderator in the chat room right now over TikTok. Thank you very much. I do have a goal over on TikTok. It is what is this community push we have going on? So I do have a goal of 200 community things, stickers. What happens now between now and 10 p.m. Pacific is that we get 2 to 3 points for each time each time you crown me with one of those. So if you want to do it, that's fine. If not, that's fine too. I understand. Okay, it's not like I'm going for a big award or anything like that. So anyway, welcome. Let's get on with our book, and hope you guys enjoy it. I'm going to read for about an hour, and you can see I'm in a weird spot too. So it's the best I can do. Usually, like I said, we're doing our psychic readings in here, and this room is set up for the psychic reading. So to do this show is a totally different ballgame, totally different layout. All right, so here we go. I'm going to start reading, and it's approximately 8:40 p.m. Pacific. I'm sorry for starting so late. You know, I haven't been feeling good, so I kept dozing off today, and how the clock keeps on ticking. And finally, I thought, oh my gosh, I promised them that I would do this, and I haven't, and so I got up to do this just for you guys. Okay, so here we go. Let's get going on this, and I'll open up the chat room over at the other two apps. So if anybody wants to come in and chit-chat, that's fine too. But just bear in mind at TikTok, if there's any gifts or any comments or anything like that, my moderator Kathy is there. She will answer your questions for you because I cannot read them, just like over here, I cannot read them. Okay? All right, guys, here we go. And I don't even know what we're reading. So let's just go with it, and let's see if I can get some. Okay. When we had kissed each other, we linked arms and moved up and down the gravel walks, watching the moonbeams sparkle on the sandbar as the tide ebbed. The broad beds of white pinks about us were a-tremble with hovering white moths. The October roses hung all abloom, perfuming the salt wind. "Sweetheart," I said, "where is Yvonne? Has she promised to spend Christmas with us?" "Yes, Dick. She drove me down from Plout this afternoon. She sent her love to you. I'm not jealous." What did you shoot? A hare and 4 partridges. They're in the gun room. I told Catherine not to touch them until you had seen them. Now I suppose I knew that Liz could not be particularly enthusiastic over game or guns. But she pretended that she was, and was always scornfully denied that it was for my sake and not for the pure love of sport. So she dragged me off to inspect the rather meager game bag, and she paid me pretty compliments and gave me a little cry of delight and pity as I lifted the enormous hare out of the sack by his ears. Now remember, these books were written, a lot of these things were written in the 1800s. Oh, I see. I'm looking at like little TikTok things over here that look weird. I've never seen them before here before. Anyway, it's just, it just threw me. So these books were written in the 1800s, late 1800s, early 1940s. So I've got to be really careful about how my verbiage. So do not send the TikTok police after me if I miss something as I'm reading, okay? Because there's stuff that I don't hit on very quickly, okay? All right. Like, follow, share. If you're in here, do me a favor, like with at least 5 to 10 people. I mean, if like and follow with at least 5 to 10 people. Share. So, he'll eat no more of our lettuce, I said, attempting to justify the assassination. Unhappy little bunny. And what a beauty. Oh, Dick. You're a splendid shot, are you not? I evaded the question and hauled out a partridge. Poor little dead thing, said Liz in a whisper. It seems a pity, doesn't it, Dick? But then you're so clever. We'll have them broiled, I said guardedly. Tell Catherine. Catherine came in to take away the game, and presently fine Leocard, Liz's maid, announced dinner, and Liz tripped away to her boudoir. I stood an instant contemplating her blissfully, thinking, my boy, you're the happiest fellow in the world. You're in love with your wife. I walked into the dining room, beamed at the place, walked out again, met Trenock in the hallway, beamed on him, glanced into the kitchen, beamed at Catherine, and went upstairs, still beaming. Before I could knock at Liz's door, it opened, and Liz came hastily out. When she saw me, she gave a little cry of relief, and nestled close to my breast. There is something peering in at my window, she said. What? I cried angrily. A man, I think, disguised as a priest, and he has a mask on. He must have climbed up by the bay tree. I was down the stairs, out the doors in no time. The moonlit garden was absolutely deserted. Tregonc came up, and together we searched the hedge and shrubbery around the house and out to the road. Jean-Marie, said I, at length, loose my bulldog. He knows you, and take your supper on the porch where you can watch. My wife says the fellow is disguised as a priest and wears a mask. Tregonc showed his white teeth in a smile. He will not care to venture in here again, I think, Monsieur Darrell. I went back and found Liz seated quietly at the table. The soup is ready, dear, she said. Don't worry. It was only some foolish lout from Bandelec. No one in St. Gildas or St. Julien would do such a thing. I was too much exasperated to reply at first, but Liz treated it as a stupid joke, and after a while I began to look at it in that light. Liz told me about Yvonne and reminded me of my promise to have Herbert Stewart down to meet her. You wicked diplomat, I protested. Herbert is in Paris and hard at work for the salon. Don't you think he might spare a week and flirt with the prettiest girl in Finisterre? Inquired Liz innocently. Prettiest girl? Not much, I said. Who is then? Urged Liz. I laughed, a trifle sheepishly. I suppose you mean me, Dick, said Liz, coloring up. Now, I bore you, don't I? Bore me? Ah, no, Dick. After coffee and cigarettes were served, I spoke about Tregonc, and Liz approved. Poor Jean. He will be glad, won't he? What a dear fellow you are. Nonsense, said I. We need a gardener. You said so yourself, Liz. But Liz leaned over and kissed me, and then bent down and hugged Momet, who whistled through his nose in sentimental appreciation. I'm a very happy woman, said Liz. Momet was a very bad dog today, I observed. Poor Momet, said Liz, smiling. When dinner was over, and Momet lay snoring before the blaze, for the October nights are often chilly in Finisterre, Liz curled up in the chimney corner with her embroidery and gave me a swift glance from under her dropping lashes. You look like a schoolgirl, Liz, I said teasingly. I don't believe you are 16 yet. She pushed back her heavy burnished hair thoughtfully. Her wrist was as white as her foam. Have we been married 4 years? I don't believe it, I said. She gave me another swift glance and touched the embroidery on her knee, smiling faintly. I see, said I, also smiling at the embroidered garment. Do you think it will fit? Fit? Repeated Liz. Then she laughed. And I persisted. Are you perfectly sure that you or we shall need it? Perfectly, said Liz. A delicate color touched her cheeks and neck. She held up the little garment, all fluffy with misty lace and wrought with quaint embroidery. It is very gorgeous, said I. Don't use your eyes too much, dearest. May I smoke a pipe? Of course, she said, selecting a skein of pale blue silk. For a while I sat and smoked in silence, watching her slender fingers among the tinted silks and thread of gold. Presently she spoke. What did you say to your crest? What did you say your crest is, Dick? My crest? Oh, something or other rampant on something or other. Dick? Dearest? Don't be flippant. But I really forget. It's an ordinary crest. Everybody in New York has them. No family should be without them. You are disagreeable, Dick. Send Josephine upstairs for my album. Are you going to put that crest on the whatever it is? I am. And my own crest, too. I thought of the Purple Emperor and wondered a little. You didn't know I had one, did you? She smiled. What is it? I replied, evasively. You shall see. Ring for Josephine. I rang, and when Fiend appeared, Liz gave her some orders in a low voice, and Josephine trotted away, bobbing her white coiffed head with a bien madame. After a few minutes, she returned, bearing a tattered, musty volume, from which the gold and blue had mostly disappeared. I took the book in my hands and examined an ancient emblazoned covers. Lilies, I exclaimed. Fleur de lilies, said my wife demurely. Oh, said I, astonished. By the way, I don't speak French, so I'm just going with it. And opened the book. You'd never before seen this book? Asked Liz, with a touch of malice in her eyes. You know I haven't. Hello, what's this? Oh, so there should be Ada before Trivik. Liz de Trivik? Then why in the world did the Purple Emperor... Dick, cried Liz. All right, said I. Shall I read about the Sieur de Trevec, who rode to Sutherland's tent alone to seek for medicine for St. Louis? Or shall I read about, what is it? Oh, here it is, all down in black and white, about the Marquis de Trevec, who drowned himself before Alva's eyes rather than surrender the banner of the Fleur de Lis to Spain. It's all written here, but dear, how about that soldier named Trevec who was killed in the old fort on the cliff yonder? He dropped the day, and the Trevecs since then have been Republicans, said Liz, all except me. Ooh, politics. That's quite right, said I. It's time that we Republicans should agree upon some feudal system, my dear. I drink to the king. And I raised my wine glass and looked at Liz. To the king, said Liz, flushing. She smoothed out the tiny garment on her knees. She touched the glass with her lips. Her eyes were very sweet. I drained the glass to the king. After a silence, I said, I will tell the king stories. His Majesty shall be amused. His Majesty, repeated Liz softly. Or hers, I laughed. Who knows? Who knows, murmured Liz with a gentle sigh. I know some stories about Jack the Giant Killer, I announced. Do you, Liz? No, not about the giant killer, but I know all about the werewolf and Jean Le Flemme and the man in purple tatters, and oh dear me, I know lots more. You're very wise, said I. I shall teach His Majesty English. And I Britain, cried Liz, who's very jealous. I shall bring playthings to the king, said I. Big green lizards from the gorse, little gray mullets to swim in glass globes, baby rabbits from the forest of Kerselec. And I, said Liz, will bring the first primrose, the first branch of aubepine, the first jonquil to the king, my king, our king, said I. And there was peace in the Finistry. I lay back idly, turning the leaves of the curious old volume. I'm looking, said I, for the crest. The crest, dear? It is a priest's head with an arrow, shaped mark on the forehead, on a field. I sat up and stared at my wife. Dick, what's the matter? She smiled. The story is there in that book. Do you care to read it? No. Shall I tell it to you? Well, then, it happened in the Third Crusade. There was a monk whom men called the Black Priest. He turned apostate and sold himself to the enemies of Christ. A Sieur de Trevec burst into sodden camp at the head of only 100 lances and carried the black priests away out of the very midst of their army. So that is how you come by the crest, I said quietly. But I thought of the branded skull in the gravel pit and wondered. Yes, said Liz. The Sieur de Trevec cut the black priest's head off. Like I said, don't turn me in, guys. Come on, TikTok. Don't turn me in. I'm doing the best I can. But first, he branded him with an arrow mark on the forehead. The book says it was a pious action, and the Sieur de Trevec got great merit by it. But I think it was cruel, the branding she signed. So let's do a little background, because since we haven't read this book in a while, okay, I just want to go do some background. So they were excavating a pit. This is back in the late 1800s, and they came across a bunch of bones in this pit. Well, there's this legend of this black priest, okay? And this black priest had a very sinister reputation, and there was a legend about him. Anybody that found his bones would be haunted, etc., 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 etc. So this is where we're at, because this man that she's talking to showed no respect for him and kept throwing his bones back down into the pit, and the bones would roll back at him. And he kept throwing the bones back down. So that brings us almost up to where we at. Thank you, MC. That brings us close to where we are now, where we began with her seeing the priest looking in through her window on the second floor or the third floor. Okay, that puts us into where we're supposed to be. Okay, so that's kind of like the background as I remember it, and probably maybe you guys remember it too, but that's the background as I remember it. Okay, let me have a slug of water here. So it's their family crest. That's spooky. As we continue. Yes, there was one in the last century here in St. Gildas. He cast a white shadow in the sun. He wrote in the Breton language. Chronicles, too, I believe. I never saw them. His name was the same as that of the old chronicler, and of the other priest, Jacques Scarbourough. Some said he was of lineal descent of the traitor. Of course, the first black priest was bad enough for anything. But he did have a child. Indeed, it did not have been the ancestor of the last Jacques Scarbourough. They say he was so good he was not allowed to die. But he was caught up to heaven one day, added Liz, who was believing eyes. I smiled. But he disappeared, persisted Liz. I'm afraid his journey was in another direction, I said, jestingly, and thoughtlessly told her the story of the morning. I had utterly forgotten the masked man at her window. But before I finished, I remembered him fast enough and realized what I'd done, and I saw her face whiten. Liz, I urged tenderly, that was only some clumsy clown's trick. You said so yourself. You're not superstitious, my dear. Her eyes were on mine. She slowly drew her little gold cross from her bosom and kissed it, but her lips trembled as they pressed the symbol of faith. All right, chapter 3 for this particular short story. About 9 o'clock the next morning, I walked into the Groy Inn and saw, down at the long discolored oaken table, nodding good day to Marianne Brewer, who in turn bobbed her white coif at me. My clever Benelux maid, said I. What is good for a stirrup cup at the Groy Inn? Schist? She inquired in Breton. With a dash of red wine, then, I replied. She brought the delicious Quimper cider, and I poured a little Bordeaux in it. Marianne watched me with laughing black eyes. What makes your cheeks so red, Marianne? I asked. Has Jean-Marie been here? We are to be married, Monsieur Darrow. She laughed. Ah, since when has Jean-Marie Tregonte lost his head? His head? Oh, Monsieur Darrow, his heart, you mean. So I do, and, said I, Jean-Marie is a practical fellow. It is all due to your kindness, began the girl, but I raised my hand and held up the glass. It's due to himself, to your happiness, Marianne, and I took a hearty draught of the schist. Now, said I, tell me where I can find Le Bihan and Max Fortin. Monsieur Le Bihan and Monsieur Fortin are above in the broad room. I believe they are examining the Red Admiral's effects. To send them to Paris? Oh, I know. May I go up? And God go with you, smiled the girl. When I knocked at the door of the broad room above the little Max Fortin opened it. Dust covered his spectacles and nose. His hat, with the tiny velvet ribbons fluttering, was all awry. Come in, Monsieur Darrow, he said. The mayor and I are packing up the effects of the Purple Emperor and the poor Red Admiral. The collections? I asked, entering the room. You must be very careful in packing those butterfly cases. The slightest jar might break wings and antennas. You know. Le Bihan shook hands with me and pointed to the great pile of boxes. They're all cork-lined, he said. But Fortin and I are putting felt around each box. The Etymological Society of Paris pays the freight. The combined collection of the Red Admiral and the Purple Emperor made a magnificent display. I lifted and inspected case after case set with gorgeous butterflies and moths, each specimen carefully labeled with the name in Latin. There were cases filled with crimson tiger moths, all aflame with color, cases devoted to the common yellow butterflies, symphonies in orange, and pale yellow cases of soft gray and dun-colored sphinx moths, and cases of grayish nettle-bed butterflies of the numerous family of Vanessa. All alone, in a great case by itself, was pinned the Purple Emperor. The Aptera iris, the fatal specimen that had given the Purple Emperor his name and quietus. I remembered the butterfly and stood looking at it with bent eyebrows. Libby had glanced up from the floor where he was nailing down the lid of a box full of cases. It is settled then, said he, that Madame, your wife, gives the Purple Emperor's entire collection to the city of Paris? I nodded, without accepting anything for it. It's a gift, I said. Including the Purple Emperor there in the case? That butterfly is worth a great deal of money, persisted Le Bihan. You don't suppose that we would wish to sell that specimen, do you? I answered a trifle sharply. If I were you, I should destroy it, said the mayor in his high-pitched voice. That would be nonsense, said I. Like you burying the brass cylinder and scroll yesterday? It was not nonsense, said Le Bihan doggedly, and I should prefer not to discuss the subject of the scroll. I looked at Max Porton, who immediately avoided my eyes. You are a pair of superstitious old women, said I, digging my hands into my pockets. You swallow every nursery tale that is invented. What of it? Said Le Bihan, sulkily. There's more truth than lies in most of them. Oh, I sneered. Does the mayor of St. Gildas and St. Julian believe in the Loup-garou? No, not in the Loup-garou. In what then, Jean Laflamme? That, said Le Bihan with conviction, is history. The devil it is, said I, and perhaps Monsieur the Mayor, your faith in giants is unimpaired. There were giants, everybody knows it, growled Max Fortin. And you a chemist? I observed scornfully. Listen, Monsieur Darrow, squeaked Le Bihan. You know yourself that the Purple Emperor was a scientific man. Now, suppose I should tell you that he always refused to include in his collection a death's messenger? And what? I exclaimed. You know what I mean. That moth that flies by night. Some call it Death's Head, but in St. Gildas we call it Death's Messenger. Oh, said I, you mean that big sphinx moth that is commonly known as the Death's Head moth. Why the mischief should people here call it Death's Messenger? For hundreds of years it's been known as Death's Messenger in St. Gildas, said Max Fortin. Even Froissart speaks of it in his commentaries on Jacques Sorgue's Chronicles. The book is in your library. Sorgue? And who was Jacques Sorgue? I never read his book. Jacques French, I'm telling you. Jacques Sorgue was the son of some unfrocked priest, I forgot. It was during the Crusades. Good heavens, I burst out. I've been hearing nothing but crusades and priests and death and sorcery ever since I kicked that skull in the gravel pit. See, he kicked the skull in the gravel pit. And I'm tired of it. I tell you frankly. One would think we lived in the Dark Ages. Do you know what year of our Lord it is, Le Bihan? 1896, replied the mayor. And yet, you two hulking men are afraid of the Death's Head moth. I don't care to have one fly in my window, said Max Fortin. It means evil to the house, and the people in it. God alone knows why he marked one of his creatures with a yellow death's head on the back, observed Le Bihan piously. But I take it that he meant it as a warning, and I propose to profit by it, he added triumphantly. See here, Le Bihan, I said, by a stretch of imagination, one can make out a skull on the thorax of a certain big sphinx moth. What of it? It's a bad thing to touch, said the mayor, wagging his head. It squeaks when handled, added Max Fortin. Some creatures squeak all the time, I observed, looking hard at Le Bihan. Pigs, added the mayor. Yes, and donkeys, I replied. Listen, Le Bihan, Do you mean to tell me that you saw that skull roll uphill yesterday? The mayor shut his mouth tightly and picked up his hammer. Don't be obstinate, I said. I asked you a question. And I refused to answer, snapped the beehive. 14 saw what I saw. Let him talk about it. I looked searchingly at the little chemist. I don't say that I saw it actually roll up out of the pit, all by itself, said Fortin, with a shiver. But then, how did it come up and out of the pit if it didn't roll up all by itself? It didn't come up at all. That was a yellow cobblestone that you mistook for the skull again. I replied, you were nervous, Max. Ah, a very curious cobblestone, Monsieur Darrell, said Fortin. I also was the victim of the same hallucination, I continued, and I regret to say that I took the trouble to roll 2 innocent cobblestones into the gravel pit, imagining each time that it was the skull I was rolling. It was, observed by Le Bihan with a morose shrug. It just shows, said I, ignoring the mayor's remark, how easy it is to fix up a train of coincidences so that the result seems to savor of the supernatural. Now, last night, my wife imagined that she saw a priest in a mask peering at her window. Fortin and LeBurn scrambled hastily from their knees, dropping hammer and nails. What? What's that? Demanded the mayor. I repeated what I had said. Max Fortin turned livid. My God, muttered Le Bihan, the black priest is in St. Gildas. Don't you know? Excuse me. Don't you know the old prophecy? Stammered Fortin. Frossier quotes it from the Jacques Sorgue. When the black priest rises from the dead, St. Gildas folk shall shriek in bed. When the black priest rises from the grave, may the good God St. Gildas save. Aristide Le Bihan, I said, angrily, and you, Max 14. I've got enough of this nonsense. Some foolish lout from Banalec has been in St. Gildas playing tricks to frighten old folks like you. If you have nothing better to talk about than the nursery legends, I'll wait until you come back to your senses. Good morning. And I walked out, more disturbed than I cared to acknowledge for myself. The day had become misty and overcast. Heavy, wet clouds hung in the east. I heard the surf thundering against the cliffs, and the gray gulls squealed. Okay. And the gray gulls, I'll try this again. The day had become misty and overcast. Heavy, wet clouds hung in the east. I heard the surf thundering against the cliffs, and the gray gulls squealed as they tossed and turned high in the sky. The tide was creeping across the river sands, higher, higher, and I saw the seaweed floating on the beach, and the lancons springing from the foam, silvery thread-like flashes in the gloom. Curlew were flying up the river in 2s and 3s. The timid sea swallow skimmed across the moors towards some quiet, lonely pool, safe from the coming tempest. In every hedge field, birds were gathering, huddling together, twittering restlessly. When I reached the cliffs, I sat down, resting my chin on my clenched hands. Already, a vast curtain of rain, sweeping across the ocean miles away, hid the island of Groix. To the east, behind a white semaphore on the hills, black clouds crowded up over the horizon. After a little bit, thunder boomed. Dull, distant, and slender skeins of lightning unraveled across the crest of the coming storm. Under the cliff at my feet, the surf rushed, foaming over the shore, and the lancons jumped and skipped and quivered until they seemed to be but the reflections of the mesh lightning. I turned to the east. It was raining over Groix. It was raining at Saint-Barbe. It was raining now at the semaphore. High in the storm were a few gulls pitched, and near a cloud trailed veils of rain in its wake. The sky was spattered with lightning. The thunder boomed. As I rose to go, a cold raindrop fell upon the back of my hand, and another and yet another on my face. I gave a last glance at the sea, where waves were bursting into strange white shapes that seemed to fling out the menacing arms towards me. Then, something moved off on the cliff. Something black as the black rock it clutched. A filthy cormorant, craning its hideous head at the sky. Slowly I plodded homeward across the somber moorland, where the gorse stems glimmered with a dull metallic green, and the heather, no longer violet or purple, hung drenched and dun-colored among the dreary rocks. The wet turf creaked under my heavy boots. The blackthorn scraped and grated against knee and elbow. Overall lay a strange light, pallid, ghastly, where the sea spray whirled across the landscape and drove into my face until it grew numb with the cold. In broad bands, rank after rank, billow on billow, the rain burst out across the endless moors, and yet there was no wind to drive it at such a pace. Liz stood at the door as I turned into the garden, motioning me to hasten. And then, for the first time, I became conscious that I was soaked to the skin. "However in the world did you come to stay out when such a storm threatened?" she said. "Oh, you are dripping. Come quickly and change. I have laid your warm underwear on the bed, Dick." I kissed my wife and went upstairs to change my dripping clothes for something more comfortable. When I returned to the morning room, there was a driftwood fire in the hearth, and Liz sat on the chimney corner embroidering. Catherine tells me that the finishing fleet from Lorient is out. "Do you think they are in danger, dear?" asked Liz, raising her blue eyes to mine as I entered. "There's no wind, and there will be no sea," said I. Looking out of the window, far across the moor, I could see the black cliffs looming in the mist. "How it rains," murmured Liz. Came to the fire. "Come to the fire, Dick." I threw myself on the fur rug, my hands in my pockets, my head on Liz's knees. "Tell me a story," I said. "I feel like a boy of 10. Liz raised a finger to her scarlet lips. I always waited for her to do that. "Will you be very still, then?" she said. "Still as death." "Death," echoed a voice very softly. "Did you speak, Liz?" I asked, turning so that I could see her face. "No, did you?" "Who said death?" I asked startlingly. "Death," echoed a voice softly. I sprung up and looked about. Liz rose too, her needles and embroidery falling to the floor. She seemed about to faint, leaning heavily on me, and I led her to the window and opened it a little way to give her air. As I did, so the chain lightning split the zenith. The thunder crashed, and a sheet of rain swept into the room, driving with it something that fluttered, something that flapped and squeaked, and beat upon the rug with soft, moist wings. We bent over it together, Liz clinging to me, and we saw that it was a death's head moth, drenched with rain. The dark day passed slowly as we sat beside the fire, hand in hand, her head against my breast, speaking of sorrow and mystery and death. For Liz believed that there were things on earth that none might understand, things that must be nameless forever and ever, until God rolls up the scroll of life and all's in it. We spoke of hope and fear and faith, and the mystery of the saints. We spoke of the beginning and the end, of the shadow of sin, of omens, and of love. The moth still lay on the floor, quivering its somber wings in the warmth of the fire, the skull and ribs clearly etched upon its neck and body. "If it's a messenger of death to this house," I said, "why should we fear, Liz?" "Death should be welcome to those who love God," murmured Liz. And she drew the cross from her breast and kissed it. "Okay, remember, guys, no TikTok police. This stuff is from the 1800s, and they have their beliefs. Everybody else has their own beliefs. Okay, we're open here at California Haunts Radio, and so we're just trying to keep the peace with everyone. Okay, please do not turn us into TikTok police." "The moth might die if I threw it out in the storm," I said after silence. "Then let it remain," sighed Liz. Late that night, my wife lay sleeping, and I sat beside her bed and read the Chronicle of Jacques Sorgue. I shaded the candle, but Liz grew restless, and finally I took the book down into the morning room, where the ashes of the fire rustled and whitened on the hearth. The death's head moth lay on the rug before the fire, where I had left it. At first I thought it was dead, but when I looked closer, I saw Lambian fire in its amber eyes. The straight white shadow it cast across the floor wavered as the candle flickered. The pages of the Chronicle of Jacques Sorgue were damp and sticky. The illuminated gold and blue initials left flakes of azure and gilt where my hand brushed them. "It is not paper at all. It is thin parchment," I said to myself, and I held the discolored page close to the candle flame and read, translating laboriously. "I, Jacques Sorgue, saw all these things, and I saw the Black Mass celebrated in the chapel of St. Gildas on the cliff, and it was said by the Abbé Sorgue, I'm assuming that's what it is, my kinsman, for which deadly sin the apostate priest, was seized the most noble Marquis of Plogistel, and by him condemned to be burned with hot irons until his seared soul quit his body and fly to its master, the evil one. We'll leave it at that, okay? But when the Black Priest lay in the crypt of Plogosto, his master, we know who that is, came at night and set him free, and carried him across land and sea to Mahmud, which is Soldan or Saladin. And I, Jacques Sargot, traveling afterward by sea, beheld with my own eyes my kinsman, the Black Priest of St. Gildas, borne along in the air upon a vast black wing, which was the wing of his master. We know who that is. And this was seen also by 2 men of the crew. I turned the page. The wings of the moth on the floor began to quiver. I read on and on, my eyes blurring under the shifting candle flame. I read of battles, of saints, and I learned how the great Soldan made his pact with the evil one. And then I came across the Sieur de Trevec and read how he seized the Black Priest in the midst of Saladin's tents and carried him away and unalived him. First, by branding him on the forehead. And before he suffered, said the chronicle, he cursed the Sieur de Trevec and his descendants, and he said he would surely return to St. Gildas. For the violence you do to me, I will do violence to you. For the evil I suffer at your hands, I'll work evil on you and your descendants. Woe to your children, Sieur de Trevec. There was a whir, a beating of strong wings, and my candle flashed up as in a sudden breeze. A humming filled the room, and the great moth darted hither and thither, beating, buzzing on ceiling and wall. I flung down my book and stepped forward. Now it lay fluttering upon the window-sill, and for a moment I had it under my hand. But the thing squeaked, and I shrank back. Then suddenly it darted across the candle flame. The light flared and went out, and, at the same time, a shadow moved in the darkness outside. I raised my eyes to the window. A masked face was peering in at me. Quick as thought, I whipped out my revolver and fired every cartridge, but the face advanced beyond the window, the glass melting away before it like mist. And through the smoke of my revolver, I saw something creep swiftly into the room. Then I tried to cry out, but the thing was at my throat, and I fell backward among the ashes of the hearth. When my eyes unclosed, I was lying on the hearth, my head among the cold ashes. Slowly, I got on my knees, rose painfully, and groped my way to a chair. On the floor lay my revolver, shining in the pale light of early morning. My mind clearing by degrees, I looked, shuddering, at the window. The glass was unbroken. I stooped swiftly, picked up my revolver, and opened the cylinder. Every cartridge had been fired. Mechanically, I closed the cylinder and placed the revolver in my pocket. The book, The Chronicles of Jacques Sargot, lay on the table beside me, and as I started to close it, I glanced at the page. It was all splashed with rain, and the lettering had run, so that the page was merely a confused blur of gold and red and black. As I stumbled toward the door, I cast a fearful glance over my shoulder. The death's head moth had crawled shivering onto the rug. Hey, that's interesting. You know why? Did your parents, and this is something that my dad used to talk about the old newspaper joke? What's black and white and red all over? And you'd go, oh, and my dad would go, a newspaper. Well, this is what he's talking about. This must be where it came from, right? Because he's talking about how it was merely a confused blur of gold and red and black. Black and white, red all over. I'm just saying. Chapter 4. We continue. The sun was about 3 hours high. I must have slept, for I was aroused by the sudden gallop of horses under our window. People were shouting and calling in the road. I sprang up and opened the sash. Le Bihan was there, an image of helplessness, and Max 14 stood beside him, polishing his glasses. Some gendarmes had just arrived from Quimperley, and I could hear them around the corner of the house, stamping and rattling their sabers and carbines as they led their horses into my stable. Liz sat up, murmuring half sleepy, half anxious questions. I don't know, I answered. I'm going to go out and see what happens, what it meant. It is like the day they came to arrest you, Liz said, giving me a troubled look. But I kissed her and laughed at her until she smiled too. Then I flung on my coat and cap and hurried down the stairs. The first person I saw standing in the road was the Brigadier, Durand. "Hello," I said. "Have you come to arrest me again? What the devil is all this fuss about, anyway?" "We were telegraphed for an hour ago," said Durand briskly, "and for a sufficient reason, I think. Look there, Monsieur Darrow." He pointed to the ground almost under my feet. "Good heavens!" I cried. "Where did that puddle of blood come from?" "That's what I want to know, Monsieur Darrow. Max Fortin found it at daybreak. See, it's splashed all over the grass, too. A trail of it leads to your garden, across the flower beds to your very window, the one that opens from the morning room. There's another trail leading from this spot across the road to the cliffs, then to the gravel pit, and thence across the moor to the forest of Kerselec. We're going to mount in a minute and search the bosquets. Will you join us? Mon Dieu." But the fellow bled like an ox. Max Fortin says it's human blood, or I should not have believed it. The little chemist at Crimper came up at that moment, rubbing his glasses with a colored handkerchief. "Yes, it's human blood," he said. "But one thing puzzles me. The corpuscles are yellow. I never saw any human blood before with yellow corpuscles. But your English doctor, Dr. Thompson, asserts that he has." "Well, it's human blood anyway, isn't it?" insisted Durand impatiently. "Yes," admitted Max Fortin. "Then it's my business to trail it," said the big gendarme, and he called his men and gave the order to mount. "Did you hear anything last night?" asked Durand of me. "I heard the rain. I wonder why the rain did not wash away these traces. They must have come after the rain ceased. See this thick splash, how it lies over and weighs down the wet grass blades? Pah! It was heavy, evil-looking clot, and I stepped back from it, my throat closing in disgust. My theory," said the Brigadier, "is this. Some of those Buriby fishermen, probably the Icelanders, got an extra glass of cognac into their hides and quarreled on the road. Some of them were slashed and staggered to your house. But there is only one trail, and yet, how could all that blood come from only one person? Could all that blood come from one person? Well, the wounded man, let us say, staggered first to your house, and then back here he wandered off, drunk and dying. God knows where. That's my theory." "A very good one," said I calmly. "And you're going to trail him?" "Why, yes. When? At once. Will you come?" Thank you for the gift. Not now. I'll gallop over by and by." "You're going to the edge of the Kerselec forest?" "Yes. You will hear us calling. Are you coming, Max?" "And you, Lebihan? Good. Take the dog cart." The big gendarme tramped around the corner to the stable, and presently returned mounted on a strong gray horse. His saber shone on his saddle. His pale yellow and white facings were spotless. The little crowd of white-coifed women with their children fell back as Durand touched spurs and clattered away, followed by his two troopers. Soon after, Lebihan and Max Fortin also departed in the mayor's dingy dog-cart. "Are you coming?" piped Lebihan shrilly. "In a quarter of an hour," I replied, and went back to the house. When I opened the door of the morning room, the death's head moth was beating its strong wings against the window. For a second I hesitated, then walked over and opened the sash. The creature fluttered out, whirled over the flower beds a moment, then darted across the moorland toward the sea. I called the servants together and questioned them. Josephine, Catherine, and Jean-Marie Turgot. Not one of them had heard the slightest disturbance during the night. Then I told Jean-Marie to saddle my horse, and while I was speaking, Liz came down. "Dearest," I began, going to her. "You must tell me everything you know, Dick," she interrupted, looking at me earnestly in the face. "But there's nothing to tell, only a drunken brawl and someone wounded." "And you're going to ride where, Dick?" "Well, over to the edge of the Kerselec forest. Durand and the mayor and Max Fortin have gone on, following a trail." "What trail?" "Some blood." "Where did they find it?" "Out in the road there, Liz." "Out in the road there." Liz crossed herself. "Does it come near our house?" "Yes." "How near?" "It comes up to the morning room window," said I, giving in. Her hand on my arm grew heavy. "I dreamed last night." "So did I. But I thought of the empty cartridges in my revolver and stopped. I dreamed that you were in great danger, and I could not move a hand or foot to save you. But you had your revolver, and I called out to you to fire." "I did fire," I cried excitedly. You fired?" I took her in my arms. My darling, I said. Something strange has happened. Something that I cannot understand as yet. But, of course, there is an explanation. Last night I thought I fired at the Black Priest. Ah, gasped Liz. Is that what you dreamed? Yes, yes, that was it. I begged you to fire. And I did. Her heart was beating against my breast. I held her close in silence. Dick, she said at length, perhaps you killed the thing. It was human. I did not miss, I answered grimly. And it was human. I went on, pulling myself together, ashamed of having so nearly gone to pieces. Of course it was human. The whole affair is plain enough. Not a drunken brawl as Durand thinks. It was a drunken lout's practical joke, for which he has suffered, I suppose. I must have filled him pretty full of bullets. And he has crawled away to endless sleep in the Kerselec forest. It's a terrible affair. I'm sorry I fired so hastily, but that idiot, Lebihan and Max Fortin, have been working on my nerves till I am as hysterical as a schoolgirl. I ended angrily. You fired, but the window glass was not shattered, said Liz in a low voice. Well, the window was open then. And as for the rest, I've got nervous indigestion. And the doctor will settle the Black Priest for me, said Liz. For me, Liz, I'm sorry. Let me read that again, I blew it. Well, the window was open then. And as for the rest, I've got nervous indigestion, and the doctor will settle the Black Priest for me, Liz. I glanced out of the window, at Trunk waiting with my horse at the gate. Dearest, I think I had better go join Durand and the others. I'll go too. Oh, no, you won't. Yes, Dick. Don't, Liz. I shall suffer every moment you are away. The ride is too fatiguing, and we can't tell what unpleasant sight you may come upon. You don't really think there is anything supernatural in this affair? Dick, she answered, I am a Breton. With both arms around my neck, my wife said, Death is a gift of God. I do not fear it when we are together, but alone, oh, my husband, I should fear a God which could take you away from me. We kissed each other soberly, simply, like two children. Then Liz hurried away to change her gown, and I paced up and down the garden waiting for her. She came, drawing on her slender gauntlets. I swung her into the saddle, and gave a hasty order to Jean-Marie, and mounted. Now, to quail under thoughts of terror on a morning like this, with Liz in the saddle beside me, no matter what had happened, or might happen, was impossible. Moreover, Morme came sneaking after us. I asked Dragon to catch him, for I was afraid he might be brained by our horses' hoofs if he followed too closely. But the wily puppy dodged and bolted after Liz, who was trotting along the high road. Never mind, I thought. If he's hit, he'll live, for he has no brains to lose. Liz was waiting for me in the road beside the shrine of Our Lady of St. Gildas when I joined her. She crossed herself. I doffed my cap. Then we shook out our bridles and galloped toward the forest of Kerselec. We said very little as we rode. I always loved to watch Liz in the saddle. Her exquisite figure and lovely face were the incarnation of youth and grace. Her curling hair glistened like threaded gold. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the spoiled puppy Momi coming, bounding cheerfully alongside, obvious to the horse's heels. Our road swung close to the cliffs. A filthy cormorant rose from the black rocks and flapped heavily across our path. Liz's horse reared, but she pulled him down and pointed at the bird with her riding crop. I see, said I. It seems to be going our way. Curious to see a cormorant in a forest, isn't it? It is a bad sign, said Liz. You know that proverb. When the cormorant turns from the sea, death laughs in the forest, and wise woodsmen build boats. I wish, said I sincerely, that there were fewer proverbs in Brittany. We were inside of the forest now. Across the gorse, I could see the sparkle of the gendarme's trappings, and the glitter of Le Bihan's silver-buttoned jacket. The hedge was low, and we took it without difficulty, and trotted across the moor to where Le Bihan and Durand stood gesticulating. They bowed ceremoniously to Liz as we rode up. This trail is horrible. It is a river, said the mayor in his squeaky voice. Monsignor Darrell, I think perhaps Madame would scarcely care to come any nearer. Liz drew bridle and looked at me. It is horrible, said Durand, walking up beside me. It looks as though the bleeding regiment looks as though a bleeding regiment had passed this way. The trail winds and winds about here in the thickets. We lose it at times, but we always find it again. I can't understand how one man, no, nor 20, could bleed like that. A hello, answered by another, sounded from the depths of the forest. It's my men. They are following the trail, muttered the brigadier. God alone knows what's at that end. Shall we gallop back, Liz? I asked. No. Let us ride. Let us ride along the western edge of the woods and dismount. The sun is so hot now, and I should like to rest for a moment, she said. The western forest is clear of anything disagreeable, said Durand. Very well, I answered. Call me, Lebehan, if you find anything. Liz wheeled her mare, and I followed across the springy heather. Mommy trotted cheerfully in the rear. We entered the sunny woods about a quarter of a kilometer from where we left Durand. I took Liz from her horse, flung both bridles over a limb, and, giving my wife my arm, aided her to a flat mossy rock, which overhung a shallow brook gurgling among the beech trees. Liz sat down and drew off her gauntlets. Mommy pushed her head into her lap, received an undeserved caress, and came undoubtedly toward me. I was weak enough to condone his offense, and I made him lie down at my feet, greatly to his disgust. I rested my head on Liz's knees, looking up at the sky through the cross branches of the trees. I suppose I've killed him, I said. That shocked me terribly, Liz. You could not have known, dear. He may have been a robber, and, if not, have you ever fired your revolver since that day, 4 years ago, when the Red Admiral's son tried to kill you? But I know you have not. No, said I, wondering. It's a fact, I have not. Why? And don't you remember that I asked you to let me load it for you the day when Ives went off, swearing to kill you and his father? Yeah, I do remember that. Well, I took the cartridges first to St. Gildas Chapel and dipped them in holy water. You must not laugh, Dick, said Liz gently, laying her cool hands on my lips. Laugh, my darling. Overhead the October sky was pale amethyst, and the sunlight burned like an orange flame through the yellow leaves of beech and oak. Gnats and midges danced and wavered overhead. A spider dropped from a twig halfway to the ground and hung suspended on the end of his gossamer thread. Are you sleepy, dear? Asked Liz, bending over me. I am a little. I scarcely slept 2 hours last night, I answered. You may sleep, if you wish, said Liz, and touched my eyes caressingly. Is my head heavy on your knees? No, Dick. I was already in a half doze. Still I heard the brook babbling under the beeches and the humming of the forest flies overhead. Presently, even those were stilled. The next thing I knew, I was sitting bolt upright, my ears ringing with a scream, and I saw Liz cowering beside me, covering her white face with both hands. As I sprang to my feet, she cried again and clung to my knees. I saw my dog rush growling into a thicket. Then I heard him whimper, and he came backing out, whining, ears flat, tail down. I swooped and disengaged Liz's hand. Don't go in, Dick, she cried. Oh, God, it's the Black Priest. In a moment, I had leaped across the brook and pushed my way into the thicket. It was empty. I stared about me. I scanned every tree trunk, every bush. Suddenly I saw him. He was seated on a falling log, his head resting in his hands, his rusty black robe gathered around him. For a moment my hair stirred under my cap. Sweat started on the forehead and cheekbone. Then I recovered my reason and understood that the man was human and was probably wounded to death. Ah, to die. For there at my feet lay the wet trail of blood over the leaves, stones, down to the little hollow, across the figure in black resting silently under the trees. I saw that he could not escape, even if he had the strength, for before him, almost at his very feet, lay a deep, shining swamp. As I stepped forward, my foot broke a twig. At the sound, the figure started a little, then its head fell forward again. Its face was masked. Walking up to the man, I bade him tell where he was wounded. Durand and the others broke through the thicket at the same moment and hurried to my side. Who are you who hide the masked face in a priest's robe? Said the gendarme loudly. There was no answer. See? See the stiff blood all around his robe? muttered Lebihan to Fortin. He won't speak, said I. He may be too badly wounded, whispered Lebihan. I saw him raise his head, I said. My wife saw him creep up here. Durand stepped forward and touched the figure. Speak, said he. Speak, quavered Fortin. Durand waited a moment. Then, with a sudden upward movement, he stripped off the mask and threw back the man's head. We were looking into the eye sockets of a skull. Durand stood rigid. The mare shrieked. The skeleton burst out from its rotting robes and collapsed on the ground before us. From between the staring ribs and the grinning teeth spurted a torrent of black blood, showering the shrinking grasses. Then the thing shuddered and fell over into the black ooze of the bog. Little bubbles of iridescent air appeared from the mud. The bones were slowly engulfed, and, as the last fragments sank out of sight, up from the depths and along the bank crept a creature, shiny, shivering, quivering its wings. It was a death's head moth. I wish I had time to tell you how Liz outgrew superstitions, for she never knew the truth about the affair, and she never will know, since she has promised not to read this book. I wish I might tell you about the king and his coronation, and how the coronation robe fitted. I wish that I were able to write how Yvonne and Herbert rode to a boar hunt in Quimperley, and how the hounds raced the quarry right through the towns, overturning 3 gendarmes, the notary, and an old woman. But I'm becoming garrulous, and Liz is calling me to come and hear the king say that he is sleepy. And this, and his highness, shall not be kept waiting. Let's see. Okay. Let me read this poem, and this is the end. There's a poem here for the end. And, not a bad story. Okay, I don't know how this song goes, so I'm just going to read it through, okay? It's called the King's Cradle Song. Seal with the seal of gold. The scroll of life unrolled, swathed him deep in his purple stole. Ashes of diamonds, crystal, coal, drops of gold, each scented fold. Crimson wings of little death, stir his hair with your silken breath. Flaming wings of sins to be, splendid pinions of prophecy. Smother his eyes with hues and dyes, while the white moon spins and the winds arise, and the stars drip through the skies. Wave, O wings of the little death, seal his sight as strife his breath. Cover his breast with the gemmed shroud pressed, from north to north, from west to west. Wave, O wings of the little death, till the white moon reels in the cracking skies, and the ghosts of God arrive. Okay, that's it then. So that's the end of that one. So we'll continue next Sunday. I want to make sure I do these. I've been slacking because I haven't been feeling good, but I want to make sure that I get to these every Sunday for you guys. So the next one is Lazarus by Leonid, because this is gonna be good. Leonid and Andreyev. Yeah, Andreyev. Translated by Abraham Yarmolinsky. Okay? So that's going to be it for today, and we'll continue next weekend, and I'll try and make sure it's earlier for you guys on the East Coast. But I want to thank everybody for being so patient today, for allowing me the time, to get it together enough today to be awake to come in and do this. So hopefully whatever this is that's been bothering me is going away and starting to settle down. I've had 3 good days in a row, so hopefully I can continue that. Okay? All right, so tomorrow I'll be back over on TikTok. And I'll be doing 3 card readings, past, present, future, tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Pacific, and we'll just continue our week. And hope you guys have a great rest of your evening. Adore you all. Thank you, TikTok. Thank you for the gifts. Good night, everybody. Thank you for coming, and I'll see you tomorrow. Push the button. Okay. And for you guys over here, same thing. Join me over at TikTok, California Haunts TikTok. And we do a lot more than readings. I mean, I'm teaching second development classes and other things over there. And we're going to be doing a lot of field trips that I've been trying to get to take everybody on that I'm working on through Restream to try and broadcast. You can tell, and I'm going to get my mouse to show you. You can tell, like back in here, you can see how this isn't lined up. Well, the thing is, I had to redo the studio to set it up for doing the nightly readings for TikTok. because I need air conditioning, and this is the room that has it. So it's not equipped to do podcasts anymore. However, I did buy an extra backdrop holder. It's a T, so I'll be able to change the two backdrops out, kind of like they do on stage sets and stuff. So I'll be doing the change on the two backdrops. So we will be able to switch back and forth with the backdrop. So we have the podcast backdrop in here as well. All right, guys, I will see you, and come join me over TikTok, California Haunts, and we have a good time. So come join us. We're going to end up getting our 8,000th follower this week. So I'm real excited about that this coming week. So come on over, join the fun. We got a real good family we built up over there. And come over here. If you haven't subscribed yet over on this YouTube channel, subscribe. Because once I get the backdrop thing settled, we're going to go ahead and start doing regular shows here. So we're going to go back to 5 days a week doing radio shows here and interviewing very interesting people in the paranormal. So we're going to be doing that. So it's just a matter of organizing and getting things reorganized. You know how it goes. All right, guys. All right, I'll see you tomorrow, hopefully over at TikTok. Okay? Bye.